Oh, no, you don't, says a federal judge in Donald Trump's second effort in 48 hours to fire the federal watchdog responsible for stopping illegal firings. I talked to you earlier about Hampton Dellinger being reinstated by Judge Amy Berman Jackson, who issued a permanent injunction requiring the Trump administration to restore his status as the head of the Office of Special Counsel, which protects federal workers from partisan attacks and from being fired because of whistleblowing. And now another federal judge, just 48 hours later, Judge Rudy Contreras, has decided that Donald Trump illegally, unconstitutionally fired one of the members of the Merit Service Protection Board, which is the other half of the coin that protects civil service workers after a 1978 Reform Act was passed, the Civil Service Reform Act.
Hello, everybody. I just love the way Michael Popak explains things. As a lawyer, he is extremely good at his job and very efficient. I love the fact that him and Ben Meiselas have decided to form the Midas Touch Network and to provide us with such detailed legal looks at what's going on, regardless of what gets said into the microphone at Trump speeches, regardless of what his press secretary, Kremlin Carolyn, says at the podium every day. We get the true paperwork and the legal filings shown to us and read to us so that we can really find out what's going on instead of the gaslighting coming from the Trump administration. Today, the United States Supreme Court handed Donald yet another loss. By the time we get done talking today, it's going to be 3 major losses within 90 minutes. The Supreme Court heard the case coming out of the Washington-based District Judge Amir Ali's court and ordered that the Trump administration must promptly release the funding and pay the workers that worked for the U.S. Agency for International Development and the State Department for their past work that had already been completed to the tune of over $2 billion. Yeah, that's right, folks. That shouldn't shock you. He wants to get out of paying $2 billion to people who have already completed their work. Where have we heard that before? You know? Yeah, Justices Barrett, Sotomayor, Justice Kagan, Justice Brown Jackson, and Chief Justice Robert wrote the order, with the dissensions from Alito, Thomas, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh being the extreme far-right people. I find it so hard to believe that people at that level could say, no, the workers have already completed their work, they're due their money, it was a contract that was guaranteed. Oh, no, we don't have to pay them $2 billion. Where is their thought process? They are so corrupt and so out of line that it's absolutely absurd. But I digress. Donald, that was number 1 for today. Number 2 was when he lost in federal court trying to fire the head of the special counsel. Head of the special counsel was formed by a Republican president. They were given the power to be an independent counsel so that there wasn't any perception of political push from either side. The president nor the minority parties weren't allowed to do anything. And it was overseen by the head of the Justice Department, whoever the head was at that time. Special counsel had to report back, and they had to have oversight, which was granted by Congress. The budget was granted by Congress for special counsel. It seems that Donald Trump feels that he has the right to fire workers for the U.S. government that have guaranteed working rights that are not under his purview. Yeah. So he was ordered to reinstate Hampton Dellinger, a career employee that was hired by Congress to be the head of the special counsel's group. That's loss number 2. Shortly thereafter, this morning, federal judge Rudy Contreras blocked Trump's attempt to fire the chairman of the Federal Workers Protection Agency, which is the other side of the coin, as Michael was telling you. It's the other side of the coin from the special counsel's group for employee protection. Yeah, Donald just doesn't seem to get it. You lose once, you throw in again. You lose twice, you throw in again. You lose 3 times. It's very much like what we did back in 2020. I believe the number back then was somewhere between 65 and 75 cases that he lost between federal courts and the Supreme Court justices, and yet he still yelled to everybody that he won. He doesn't care what the courts do or what the courts say. He doesn't care what you or I say. He will care soon, though. So Donald has the impression that he can just keep getting away with all this. Right now, as of the last count that I got just before I went on air here tonight, 96 lawsuits have been filed against Donald and his administration. There are something like 17 temporary injunctions, and I believe it's 5 permanent injunctions against him. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been on this planet over 70 years. I have never heard of a Republican or a Democratic administration having that many problems with the court systems. It just doesn't happen unless you're Donald Trump, who doesn't care about the law. He doesn't care about you or me either, to be quite honest with you. He has an agenda, and you're starting to see it, okay? You're starting to see it when the guy, I'm trying to remember his name here, he's the head of the NCRR Council, Chairman Richard Hudson, has told Republican representatives, both House and Senate, to stop holding town halls because they're getting eaten alive. People are coming in, their constituents, you and me, the voters, are coming in to have a grievance hearing with him, and the people are eating their lunches and destroying anything that gets said. And you can hear the representatives actually say, Donald's got a plan, God has a plan. Yeah, well, God's not paying for anyone's groceries the way I hear it. And the last time I checked, he didn't put any gas into any of my vehicles or any electricity into any of my vehicles. You know, he gave me hope maybe, but he didn't give me anything else. Donald's got so many things going against him besides his court battles that are just causing so much chaos. And again, I remind you, I said to you a month ago, when just after I started up the podcast here, that to keep your eye on the ball, because this is smoke and mirrors. It was a conversation that I had with someone today that went back to something that we discussed a month ago, that Donald is a meat puppet. Donald's a meat puppet for whosever agenda is being whispered in his ear, whether it's the oligarchs who stopped him from the tariffs that he put in place the other day. See, technically it's Wednesday night. You guys will see this on Thursday. But what he put into play on Tuesday, saying that Wednesday morning the tariffs were going to start till Wednesday afternoon, when he suddenly flinched yet again because somebody from the oligarchs called him up and said, hey, dude, you're screwing the market into the ground. It's over 1,600 points down yesterday, and it's down another 500 this morning. Do something about it. So he had his chairman of the Commerce go out and say, well, he's going to kind of roll them back. He's thinking more along the lines of the USMCA tariffs, and that's how it'll probably go along unless there's other things going on. And we're going to use the word temporary. In other words, you flinched, you blinked. Your oligarchs called you and told you were screwing the market into the ground, so you had to change. And then, oh yeah, there's the fact that the town hall meetings aren't going well and your constituents aren't happy. And yeah, there's marches all around the United States. Donald's got so many irons in the fire trying to fight so many different things that there's no way this works. He folds to Canada. By the way, did anybody hear Canada say anything about wanting to negotiate it? I didn't hear Trudeau say anything, and I got kind of a close ear on Canada. I didn't hear Ford from Ontario say anything. I didn't hear the guy from Manitoba, the big guy that looks like a First Nations Indian for Canada. None of them said anything. I didn't hear Claudia Sheinbaum say a word. I did see a cut from Chi, who just said, if you want to go to war, we'll go to war, whether it's economic or otherwise. And I thought that was kind of chilling, you know, because they've got a lot more resources than we do. But I digress. Nobody was flinching out there except for Donald. And Donald backed it up the minute the stock market crashed, the minute it looked like the auto industry was going under, and the minute the Dow Jones dumped well over, what was it? It was 1,600 last night, 5 this morning, closer to 2,100 points when he got the word in his ear that he needed to fix it. Yeah. That's when Donald does anything, and that's when the oligarchs call him, or anybody else that's got money in his pocket that controls him, like a meat puppet. So I'm gonna end tonight with a clip from Fox News that was, I believe it was a CNN anchor, played it, where Maria Bartiromo, who is or was a good financial advisor many years ago. I used to actually listen to her. And then she joined the Fox at 5 crew, or whatever it is, the Fox Entertainment Center. And she joined them. But she's back talking economics, and she's kind of worried about it. So I'm going to leave you with this clip for just a second.
DOJ has done in terms of cutting federal spending. There are lots of questions in terms of whether or not this is going to lead to a further slowdown. Can DOJ induce a recession with all of this cutting? And what about the tariffs and the pressure that that brings to bear as well?
These tariffs, Cheryl's right on. These tariffs are really scary. And I think you're right. It has a real possibility of bringing on a recession.
When you're losing the folks over at Fox Business, wow. I thought it was important that you see that. Fox Business on the revelation that the guy who filed for bankruptcy 6 times may not be quite so genius at running the country's economy. And it's not just over at Fox. Our friend Sarah Longwell, a longtime pollster, writes in The Atlantic today that many Trump voters who picked Donald Trump over Vice President Kamala Harris because of issues like the rising cost of living maybe having some buyer's remorse. She writes this, quote, Trump voters and focus groups are showing signs that they do not believe that Trump's policy priorities are about cheaper groceries. Instead, they see him getting distracted by culture war issues that won't actually improve their lives. Quote, I wanted a lot of change as far as inflation and the price of everything. That's Charlie, a Biden to Trump voter in Georgia, who said that in a focus group last month, quote, so I haven't seen any real changes there. As a matter of fact, I think for me, things are worse as far as inflation. The market panic, at least, seems to be getting to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is granting a 1-month exemption on his stiff new tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada, specifically for U.S. automakers, as worries and fears persist that his newly launched trade war could crush domestic manufacturing. Trump did not announce what moves, if any, he will take to address the fact that the people who voted for him are still have a lived experience of their bills going up.
Yeah. Now, believe it or not, I mean, when you've got the Fox Business News saying that you're getting ready to cause a recession, well, that's another chime in the ear. When Rupert Murdoch calls you and tells you he doesn't want you doing what you're doing, you know, when the Washington Post doesn't want you doing what you're doing, when your oligarchs tell you they don't like how you're acting. Notice anybody hasn't heard from Muskrat lately. I guess he's busy trying to get Starship off the ground. They've had 3 delays so far, and while I don't give SpaceX any grief, I do find them a very talented group that's doing things that I never thought I would ever see in my lifetime. Elon's got a money investment in him. He's not a rocket scientist. Dear God, he's lucky he's able to get up and walk and talk at the same time. But I digress. Elon's not around. He's busy doing something else. I'm not sure where Elon is, and that's scary. I'm suspecting that is at SpaceX. But when Fox Business News says it's not looking good for Donald, yeah. Between 3 major court battles that he lost within 90 minutes, a Supreme Court ruling, 2 federal court rulings, and now his oligarchs are trying to get him to correct the tariffs, which he keeps saying he's going to put on, but then he keeps backing off. I believe this is count 3, you know. And Captain Jack, if you're out there, I sent you a message in yesterday's podcast. You know, I didn't hear from you. You talked to me so many times yesterday about Trump's numbers, about how he was so popular. And then when the news came out that he's at a +1, or a normal president's at a +26, that's not looking good. The only guy he's better than was himself during his last administration, where he was a -8. He's a +1 now, and you should be at somewhere around a +26. But, Jack, that's okay. Don't worry. I get it. I'm not trying to kill you. I'm just trying to bust your chops a little here. Have some fun. Grab yourself a beer on me. But I digress. It's wonderful talking to all of you every night. It's wonderful to have a First Amendment right to speech. It's wonderful to be able to go out and protest. I showed you the protests from Rochester, New York yesterday. wonderful group of people. I can't wait to get back together with them again. I'm hoping to have something in my local area again too. But I digress. Thank you for being here. Thank you for spending your valuable time listening to my whinings and wanderings. Do me a favor. Hit the like button down there, the little thumbs up. Give me a thumbs up. I've told you before, I understand some people don't like to subscribe. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. I really, truly would. But if you don't want to do that, at least give me a thumbs up. Help me with the algorithm. Help me get things going. And I'll remind you all again that we here at Unscripted Political Discourse support the 50-51 protest marches, the nonviolent events, 100%. With that, folks, I'm going to say thank you for letting me in. Thank you for coming and listening to me. And have a wonderful evening. Good night.